Recognizing everything that we aren't is recognizing everything that we are. We have to process how to use that lines of no existing to existing at the same time. That puts everything of alteration, all lines existing in all frames of all time, communication to its systems, all through attractions, all through divisions. For example, if we understand the creation, we have to understand the creating. You put that together, that comes into a timeline now. And that's already done through its equation. The mind operates the system that changes every case to its systems and all lines calculates and modify. But living the nothing is living the nothing of the existing, of the existence, all levels on you and positions. Existing in all formations of all platforms is processing you how you see yourself in reality of itself, is all timelines all at once. We've always been in that settings, but you have to formulate and simulate that and get out of the stories of everything that you're not, is to let everything go. And once you let everything go, everything formulates and simulates into nothing that processes you, but you need the nothing to become into the existence of existing. That gets you in all lines of all communication into the alterations of the mind of the state that you put yourself into through projection, okay, or what you perceive or what you're in that position lines attractions. This helps you and guides you in that setting lines of all communication through systems. Now, once you let everything go, you start living. You really start living. You don't lock yourself in dimension how you see things. For example, I get up in the morning and I'm already locked in 3D, so there's nothing I can do and track communication to its system. So I'm just going to basically create another story, add a frame, that position location, change all that communication to its system in that settings. Now I'm living in the seconds, minutes, and hours in a 24-hour frame. So everything I'm saying is overriding everything that I already am of existing. And to everything that I see is non-existing, but existing at the same time. And that's what it is. No planes, all planes. Okay? No number, all numbers. That's how it works. It's not a mystery, okay? It's not magic. What you have to start identifying is to get out of everything that isn't you through creation. Creation's already set up. Coming into the automatic writing is the process of you coming into the creation of creating. Now that comes into your timeline. Once you guys get in your timeline in that position, you start to recognize what that is when you come into year after year after year. That's already set up in the mind. And that's where it gets very confusing because the mind is not here or there. It's not there, but it's always existing and it's nothingness. The nothingness is what it always is, not what it always isn't. It's always there. But for it to process in position is for you to understand how to mind control your system and how you bring your thoughts, action, emotions. So you're bringing something out of non-existing to existing now of existence that you come into your time frame. Coming into time frame is an alter frame location to its mind, alter state of its frame, and that's that position location of travel. Okay? It's all psychological, and that settings and communications. All right? So for example, if I'm just standing here, I'm just non-existing, but I'm also existing at the same time, which means I'm coming into a body, which is now existing of its existence of all time, all at once, existing and everything happening all at once in real time. See, this is where it gets confusing because you're not identifying what you're bringing in mind control. You're bringing in thoughts, action, emotions. Now it's overriding what you already are in is the existing of its existence that you're putting yourself back in the story. That's overriding your system in the body that you aren't. The process of communication system is truly understanding how to control the mind of what you're bringing in through the body. The body's always there. The body's always there when needed, but the body's never there when you're in empty space. So the body doesn't come in until you bring in your simulator of your systems. Okay? That's how fast it is to the mind. So the mind's already done it through its creating of its creations. All you're starting to identify now is what you've already done through your networks in your body. So this outlines the signals of seconds, minutes, and hours coming into that position lines of settings of hours coming into that position location of frames. That puts you in all position locations and settings. You come into all of your days, your weeks, okay? You come into your months, you come into your years, and then you come into decades, and then you come into millenniums in the same day in the 24/7 position lines of travel. But everything in the mind is already done through its creation of its creating. You put that together, now you're coming into your timeline. And when you come into your timeline, basically it's kind of like I'm looking at a blank slate every single time I'm writing, realizing I've already wrote this, right? That's creation and creating at the same time. Now you're in your timeline. So now you let everything go. You don't need to write these things down. So it's basically understanding that If I'm already non-existing, I'm existing at the same time. But how you are non-existing, existing at the same time, puts you into dimension on what you want to put in your thoughts, and how you come into your action. Emotions puts every location setting to your set location to its traction. So as you're speaking and as you say anything, you're automatically bringing in frame, but you have to be in a body. Okay, but you're non-existing and existing at the same time, which means you're changing frequencies, you're changing phase facades, you're changing time, you're changing no time or timelines all at once. But the one thing you can't get out of in set position is everything's done through its equation. Being done is directions of operation network is just existing, and that puts you in all levels of creations of creating. And once you get full access and clearance that's already in storage, that's already there, and it's taking, it comes to you in its network system. So you have full access to clearance, and now you can use it in that time frame through the creations of creating that you did in your minds, which is more powerful than you can imagine. But you have to keep letting things go, because if not, you keep creating frames that don't exist. You creating story frames. For example, when you get in the position, you think you're in a pond, not realizing you've always been in the ocean. So you're overriding your existing, living in the ocean, but you think you're still in a pond. That's a story. Now you override the story, you're overriding the sequence of the frame of the story that's changing all communication of you being in the ocean, of you just existing. Think you're in the coexistence of yourselves. So when you get in that position, it's mind controlling your system, right? So coming into the mind line, because there's all perception of empty space and empty mind, which is just you and nothing else. Nothing's existing until you bring it in the mind and conception. And then you start to recognize, wow, I'm not existing. It's interesting. I'm seeing everything around me. And I realize, oh, there's my body. Your body's always there, but the body's always in transition, okay? It's never, ever, ever left its system. But where it is, it's always been expanding, exploring, and evolving its system. But you have to let everything go that was never you in the first place. The too many minds. You get out of too many minds, there's no mind. And when you get at no minds, that's where you are. And then you process that, and you come in your all timelines all at once, existing and evolving yourselves. And once you get a better understanding of how that all works, then you understand you are in the mind that creates the body when it sees things in perspective through its perception. But nothing's created until you understand how to control the mind of itself. And when you control the mind of itself, the mind is just creating, right? So the mind has already done the pie. Okay? You're going through the stepping ladders of communication, trying to get there. No, you're just identifying you're already there, up the stairs. I said that before. So you've never been on the stairs in that position, okay? You are the stairs. Now that's the next level. So once you recognize that you're all timelines all at once, non-existent and existing in all formation system, then you understand, wow, I don't have to write anything. I don't even have to remind myself. I don't have to remember myself because I'm already in transition. The mind is just reminding me that I only have 2 lives. And the second one is reminding you, you have 1. And the one's reminding you, you have none. Welcome home. And when you're home, you're just in transition now. Transition is always what you've been. Crossing lines of screens, directing lines of travels, and 3 lines of grounds. Okay? Crossing the bridge. It's that position, right? But now, always knowing in that position, you've always been in transition. So it doesn't matter how you see yourself in any way and form. That's one thing you can't get in positions or again in anything out in tractions, because it's all levels of the mind and collaboration in setting. So understanding that, then you come into all levels and how you see yourself in your timelines, your time frames, and really get in that position location system. And then you ask yourself, wow, so when I'm looking at things, now it comes into form of body, but it's all done through the mind of its body. So nothing comes in its true form until you understand it's no form. Space and time, spaceless and timeless, shape and shapeless, form and formless, motion, motionless, sense, senseless. That's all timelines all at once. That's all it is, nothing else. So as you're bringing yourself in, you're changing the frequencies of everything around you in seconds, minutes, and hours. That changes everything in your spectrum. And how you see yourself is how you formulate yourself in traction. Okay? Getting the grounds with your earth is getting the grounds through the space at the same time. When you come in that position location, your systems, all through tractions, in your position locations, your polarities. Your earth polarities and your space polarities. There's the 8. So you can earth line to setting, you can mean earth line to projection location at 12. Okay, and you can mean earth 15,000 lines of track center locations. One's you, one's consciousness. Okay, but you're constantly aware of both of your systems. So it's a figure 8 that rotates this system, and now you can change the angle, right? You want to add a platform of communications. You want a circulation ground centers of surface and tractions. You want to have a direct line, link line communication setting, right? But what you have to understand, it's all invisible. Okay, so it just disappears, right? So what you're doing is you're disappearing your body and you're coming into the mind of disappearing. It's like you disappear, but you're still there. It's like a magic trick, and that's very powerful, where the magician, okay, knows the trick. The audience sees the illusion. That's misinterpretation, okay, comes in that settings, okay? Mishandling anything in information system, how you see it in tracks and that position location. That's misdirect. That's all you're seeing. You're focusing, okay? Not on its equation, not on its formula. And they get you in all lines, all communication setting, how you see that in tractions. Knowing exactly what you're looking at. It's always been there in set position. It's always existing in set position. But just because it's not there doesn't mean it's always been there. So how you communicate yourself is how you come in positions of balance. It's still there, right? Hasn't left, right? So the more you get into the mind, the more you release in the body. And the more you get out of the body, the more you come into the mind of conception. And you start to realize, wow, now I just have to control everything around me that's non-existing and existing at the same time. So you have to be in that. That's the yin, that's the yang. So now we're going to higher levels of set lines of truth narratives and false narratives. So this is where it comes in position location of non-existing and existing at the same time. So how we get into that, okay, is truly understand this lines of setting. There's a 4, right? Now, coming into the truth as the center operation in position of the false and the narrative locations, right? Truth is the inner cycle, and the outer cycle is space. Space is what? You're going to get very confused now. Space is setting lines of all communication setting in the line direct locations of non-existing. Space itself is non-existing. That's the mind of collaboration of its system itself. All right, so it's already in its set position in tractions, right? Which it doesn't exist, but it exists when it wants to in settings, right? Okay, so that's the non-existence, the space. The inner cycle, okay, sets position location in your systems in tractions, okay? That's the outer space, okay? Now the outer space is the no existence. The inner space is the existence. That's the time measure of your earth and space in trajectory. Process into directory communicates to its spectrum and track correlation to its formula through equation, how you see yourself in question. So it gets a lot more confusing now, right? Because now you're adapting inside the simulation of outer space, which is your reality of inner space. Inner space is the perspective, how you see yourself as your body forms into the mind's eye, into the eyes of the windows of the soul. So for you guys to understand that, everything that you say, you're bringing in the mind of its body, how it sees in perception. But everything around you doesn't exist until you bring it in. That's perceiving consciousness. So I'm looking at you, but I have no body. I have no shape. Okay? There's no connection to anything of a mind, because the mind doesn't come in, okay, until you come into your perception, until you come in your perspective, until you come into your setting, until you come into your thoughts, your actions, and your emotions. The mind doesn't exist because it's always in creating, which is already done through its alteration of its time. But the mind lives in all timelines at once, of no existing and existing. That's where it comes in information, locations, and setting. Why you guys get confused, because you're only seeing yourself in a time-locked sequence in one-dimensional space of time. 3-dimension, 5-dimension, 7th-dimension, but you're still locked in 3-dimension, right? So whatever you're saying, you're locking yourself more into a story that isn't you, okay? So you're overriding and overcharging your mechanisms. You're putting yourself more of a story. You're allowing yourself not to be set free because you're already in freedom. You're already in sovereignty. You just don't see it because you don't have the collaborations and the partnerships with your mind that's connected to the brain, that's connected to the soul, that's connected to the body of its alignment. So there is nothing for you to do at all. You're just coming into your timelines of what you already did through creations of creating. And when you put those together, you're now coming into the alteration of your state of mind of timeline, which is also done. Okay? So when you're looking around in any way and form, and you don't see anything in the mind, there's nothing there. It's in transition of empty space. But when you perceive consciousness, now you're popping things in on his board, on his grid. And now you see it in frame. So you brought nothing into something that becomes everything. That's the nothing. Nothing can be created from nothing and understands as something of creations of everything, right? So once you understand how to control that and understand that, you understand your all levels of just outer space. That's it. There's no inner space. It's the outer space. That is the mind. It's the inner space. That's how you see and perception, as perceiving how you come to your thoughts, your action, emotions. Now you're in a body of existing, of its existence, and all ways and forms, okay, into existing of non-existing at the same time. Okay, non-existing, existing, doesn't matter. But what matters is how you bring it in through your activity system. Now it comes in your voice and lines of grids. How you determine that is knowing exactly how you bring it in codification. Now that comes into letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols to your traffic, to your inventories, right? So that's basically what it is. So as you guys see me on TV, or you see me on live, or you see me on the phone, or you see me on the computer, or see anywhere in attractions, you're always going to see me, but not see me. You're seeing how you want to see me through perceiving, through consciousness, through your body, through your mind, through your perception. And that's where we're all coming out of. Okay? So it's very powerful when we come into that positions, right? You're seeing what you want to see. You're creating a fantasy how you want to see me, but you're not seeing me. That's an ego. That's a trigger. That's in a trap. That's a story. So you're adding a story within a story to another story. They're adding an online set position location, and you don't realize you're putting yourself out of the ocean and bringing yourself back in the pond. And knowing exactly you're always in the ocean. Never been in a pond in the first place. That's the confusion of your mind. Doesn't understand the adaptations of balance of what you're doing through the equilibrium, recognizing you're not a story of everything. Okay? The story is you telling yourself from the narrative, you and directions, how you see yourself and tractions of the story that you are, not the story you're in. You're not in a story. Your story is a life of you, not a story that you're not. For you to understand that is not done through the mind. So the mind doesn't exist until you speak. What do you think of that? Your brain doesn't exist until you speak. What do you think about that? Your heart is not here or there. It's just empty space, empty mind. Until you perceive, bring things in consciousness. Now everything around you brings everything in, one at a time. And using the mind comes in into telepathy, how you want to connect with that set position, but you got to get in position of observations, especially now, because everything around you is going to be extremely wired and live and screen adaptations. You're going to see the conscious awareness of everything moving very fast, like I said on his treadmill, right? For example, I'll give you an example lines of 12 studies of screen adaptations of flux. Process communication lines, high direct signals. You got the cup. Setting panels, process in position. All right, there's the cup. That's 3-dimension. All right, that's 3-dimension. All right, now this is 12-dimension. This is what you're going to be seeing in 12 dimensions. 12 dimensions of cups in 2 different directions, 3 different directions, 4 different directions, 12 different directions. That's how you're going to see the cup. So when you're more confused, you're going to see the cup in higher levels in setting platforms, in setting communications. More confusion in your systems and travel, overriding setting calculations, right? So you're seeing the cup this way and cup that way. Now you're in very confusing line settings, the screens. Now you're seeing the cup in all ways and forms of very aligned communication, adding story frames and set specification to systems. You're seeing it in all directions now. 4 signals that grounds in set position all through all lines in that position location system, all through a cup. Okay? Complicated, isn't it? Isn't it? So, what you have to start identifying is get into mind control of everything that you see through flowing recognitions. So when you're walking around, right, you don't need to do this to move the tree, right? The tree sees you already, right? So you're already in simulation, it doesn't matter anyway. But you're seeing the tree in the 12th dimension right away. You're already in the 12th dimension. Okay? For you to understand that is to flux down to get you in the 10th dimension, 9th dimension, 8th dimension, 7th dimension. Because you've already done it through the equation, the mind's already set up through perception. So it doesn't matter anyway through pi. But what you identify when you're looking at things, see, I'm talking to the tree and the tree is moving now. But I'm not doing it in my hand, it's all done, right? So I'm looking at the beauty, I'm looking at the art, change the color, change the lights, change the direct communications, but I have an ongoing conversation with the tree itself. Okay? Because I know the tree is not here, but it's here when it's existing. It has its own formation, it has its own time, has its own measure, has its own scale, has its own operation, it has its own brain. The tree itself. Everything around you has its own cloud. Everything around you has its own CPU. Everything around you has its own operation system. Everything around you has its own intel. What you have, it has already. See, what you're identifying is its alignment that's already done. What you're not understanding is you're not understanding yourself as a body that you're not in. See, once you get in that position, you start to look at the cup. Okay? Again, 3-dimension. Okay? Setting sequence. Setting travel. Set attractions. 4th dimension. Are you with me so far? Okay? So I'm going to go up the levels, how you guys start to see in locking screens adaptations, right? Set attractions, right? Okay. So, set position, 4th dimension, right? 5th dimension. Okay? Now, understanding 5th dimension, you're coming out of sequence, out of panel operation, out of screen. So your perception starts to see the perspective, how it sees things in set lines of travel. All right, so in position, once it gets in position of 5, it automatically comes into its highways and travel. Very confusing to all levels of the cup now, right? So that gets in position location, settings, torical fields, operation sequence, 5th dimension. Okay? 3 platforms in setting. Here we go. 6th dimension. And it's still a cup. You see what I'm doing? I'm trying to get you guys to understand what you're going to be seeing through flux. So you're automatically giving it a 12th line. But if you want to connect with everything that has its own connection, its own information, its own system, its own travel, no location setting to its position, location, and systems, you've got to get control of your dimensions of what you're seeing through perspective. Perception, okay? But it's constantly traveling on its own, right? Which is more powerful than you can imagine. You're in your reality, it's in its own reality that governs its own space. So for you guys to identify that, you have to understand the dimensional layers of space. This is the 6th dimension, right? Setting sequence, setting panel. There's the 7th dimension, okay? And it's still a coffee cup. So it's constantly traveling through its timelines and sequence, and it already knows where you are in alignment. It already knows because it's already set up in its mind itself. Everything you see around its own system is in its own mind. It's already set up and it's in alignment. So it's already been through this. That's what's more powerful. It's here to help you and guide you. So you get a true understanding. Wow, I am not sitting in a chair. I'm starting to recognize the conscious awareness all this time is giving me instructions how to sit in that chair. Realizing it's traveling on its own. And it always has been. So everything that you're going to be seeing, you're going to see everything move. Nothing is still in the mind. Nothing. Nothing process of anything in the mind of confusion. It's you not understanding your time and where you are in your space and the mind itself will travel. Okay? All through tractions, right? All right. Setting lines of sequence in high position, 8th dimension, all through a coffee cup. And that's what you're seeing in seconds, minutes, and hours in frame. You're looking at the cup. This is 8th dimension, right? Setting its travels in point lines of graph, outside line rotations, coming into its position of its planet. 9th dimension, all through a coffee cup. Okay? You see what I'm doing now? All through a coffee cup. It's showing you how powerful it is, how you see it through its own travel of its mechanism, of its force recognition, into the mind conception of an online setting. And that's how you start to see everything of design in its operations, of its own consciousness, of its own awareness, moving by itself. Now, when I say moving by itself, I'm not saying when you get in the 12th dimension, their chair is going to be doing this. No. What's going to be happening, everything's going to be moving. And where you are in your mind, it's going to, you touch the cup, right? You feel the vibration faster, right? You touch your phone, okay, you drop your phone. You're not recognizing the frequencies. You turn on your TV turns off itself. So what we have to start identifying is how to control that through the simulations that we always have been in, is the mind, the eyes, the windows of the soul. And in that position location, you start to get in communications how to bounce that out, how you see things in its dimension all at once. So you're not just seeing a coffee cup in 12 settings. You're seeing a coffee cup of where it's going. It's in its own operation of its own system, of its own instructions. Okay? It's in its own system, in its own operation, guys. It's operative to its own system. It's its own director. It's its own story. It's its own narrative. But see, this is the thing. Everything around you has already been through its alteration system of time. So you're not coming into anything. You're not reminding yourself of this. You're not getting in positions of remembering this or remembering that I got to learn this, I got to learn that. No. All you're doing is recognizing everything in volume and mass now. And the more you go higher levels of the mind, the more you see things coming out of frame. Like, for example, you're looking at the TV, okay? And then you see the TV coming out, position of you. And then you see the other direction setting location to its systems, all right? So, and this is you and setting, right? Okay, so you guys, so this is a 4-box frame, 3 centers, lines of travel, 3 lines of calculations, right? So, set of position locations, pyramid here and pyramid here. Okay, there's a pyramid on a different angle. That's a pyramid there, and that's a pyramid there, right? 2 pyramids in there, right? You got a pyramid in the center attractions. And then you got another pyramid here in the center, and track correlations and settings and travel, right? So it's how you start to see in perception of windows and eyes of its spectrum and track communications, okay? And then you start to recognize what it is in all ways and forms, okay? In that position of its doors. Right, it's bringing the doors and travel communications. There's the doors. Okay, door 1, door 2, door 3, door 4, door 5. Whoa. Okay, and they change it again. There's the platform of communication, right? So it's constantly changing its form. It's constantly changing its time. It's existing and non-existing at the same time measure of all scale, all timelines, all at once. It's changing its traction. It's changing its direction. It's changing its models. It's changing its prototype of travel. Constantly. It's never in the same frequency. So when you pick up a cup and you put it down, it's now at a different frequency. And it's for you to identify that in the simulations that you are. Not what you're in. You're never in anything. You are what you are. So it's kind of like I'm an actor in a film, but I just don't want to be an actor and a director controlling me. You want to be control of your life. So it's basically, you're not just controlling the film, you're controlling the production of the film. You understand that? You're controlling the actors and the characters and the players you bring inside the game. That's a life force of recognition of time. That's constantly existing in all formations, all timelines, all at once. Not only you're in control, but you're in control of the pre-production and the post-production of the film that you're creating. You're controlling everything around you. Your mind controlling everything, but you also know in that position that everything you see is also in its own control. That's the balance of 2 into 1. And that comes into the figure 8 in set position. The consciousness of everything and the consciousness of you of everything is the rotation. Is the process how you use that in yin and yang of communication. Okay, in its settings, and there it is. There's the intelligence. Okay, there's the neck. Okay, there's the antenna. Okay, it's intelligence, right? But it constantly changes its form. It constantly changes its directions. It constantly changes its space and time attraction, right? So it's constantly evolving and expanding itself. So the reason why you guys have to wake up from this, because everything around you is coming in its own entity, of its own form, of its own shape, of its own creating into something new, right? Taking out what you are and not in position of is the story itself. Now getting into that settings gets you in a higher communication system of what you're doing through attractions. It's to let go of everything that you see in modification. Locking yourself in dimensions of space and time. So if you lock yourself in the 4th dimension, your body's in the 4th dimension. You lock yourself in the 5th dimension, your body's locked in the 5th dimension. And that's how you see everything and everybody else, and the cars and the trees, because you're locking yourself into the cogs. Cogs have to be set free. Cogs is the position of predetermination that's already done through its equation. So now you can't breathe. Your combustions, your mainframes, your track frames, your correlation settings, your track communication system, your cognitive lines, your senses, your sensories, your communication height centers and travels, your internal force, your external force. You have to come into the extremities of everything location of travel. Knowing exactly what you're doing in position is thinking for yourself. You can't think for yourself and having others to think for you. You can't breathe. You're not allowing yourself to be the nutrition of yourself. You're not allowing yourself to be the healthy of yourself. You're not allowing yourself to be the real you of yourself. You're not allowing yourself to be the true authentic of yourself. Because you have everything around you controlling you. But there's no they of that or they or this. So what's taking over in that position, to be technical, is the space itself, which is your codes. In that communication setting, you guys have direction. Understanding direction is understanding force. Understanding force is understanding life of force. Understanding life of force is understanding life of force of space and time. So know exactly how to use that in all information node systems. You understanding that through all levels. You create yourself through a story, yes. Okay, but that story just keeps moving. It doesn't stop. Okay, you don't just finish a story and then give it to your editor or give it to your publisher. No, you just keep running the system. Okay, you're running your own operation. Everything around you, okay, is also in its own operation. That's what it is. It's consciously being aware of everything you have, and then you start to appreciate, and then you start to adjust, and you start to absorb, and you don't get into underestimating, overestimating everything that you see through dimension of space and time. Okay, how everything sees you, not perceptions, how they see you. So we have to get out of that equation, or we're never going to understand everything. All we're seeing ourselves is a fantasy that we're not. We're perceiving things that we don't understand, what we are not in positions of, not understanding that we're non-existing and existing at the same time. That puts everything, all timelines all at once, and existing all at once. Okay? Now, coming into the truth, okay, is the truth of everything that you aren't, is the truth of everything that you always are, the transition itself. Now, once you get into that position, not only that, you're putting yourself all levels. You're putting yourself at 100% out of the body and 100% in the mind itself. That's the balance, guys, you want to get. And 100% in position to another 100% in setting is the collaboration, right? Sets grounds of 1, set grounds of 2. Travels, point lines of graph, there's your pyramid. Okay, setting sequence. Ground centers of 3 service, 3 lines of settings of travel. Okay, offline setting, process lines, set positional levels into travel communications, your antenna. Direct grounds triangulation, clocking centers as set position, location, measure, and scale of communications. All right. Understanding the platforms as center lines of 1, center lines of 2, center lines of 3 in travel. Platforms of setting of 3, 4 settings, 3 set lines of communications, 4 direct signals lines of grounds, high calculation lines, high center of service to travel. Okay. Bringing in through the calculation system, changing information lines and modification grounds. High lines of signals inside location system to its structure of its map in travel communications in setting. Ooh-ah. Okay. All different angles, all through set position and travel. Okay. So coming into nothing is all formations how you see massive everything, right? So your test today is just basically more of a reminder what you already know, what you're coming into, what you are, what you've always been. You know, everything I say to you, I always bring it forward. Why? How do I bring it forward? Clean slating everything that doesn't exist. So you don't have to draw. You don't have to do your schematics because they're already done through equation. But for you to understand that is you have to keep yourself in the body of no existence. Comes into all levels of existing at the same time, same scale, same balance, same measure. Set transitions. Okay? So you don't get confused what you're doing through a drawing. Realizing I've already done this through creation of creating. Now I'm just going through my time, just existing and evolving in myself. But where I really am I in is all levels and how I see myself. It's the nothing, it's the mass of everything. It's the eyes, the windows of the soul that you see. But one thing that you can't get yourself out of, that you always are in, is the transition already that you are. And that's why you have to let go of everything, especially the body that traps your systems in the story. Because if you keep trapping yourself in the story, you're never going to identify you've always been in the ocean, and you're more comfortable being on the pond. Not recognize I never was in a pond to begin with. I've always been in the oceans. And once you stay in the ocean, you come into plus of oceans. And once you stay in plus of oceans, you realize you're not the ocean. I am the ocean. I'm not just looking at the ocean. I've always have been the ocean. I've always have been space. I've always have been time. I've always been in transition. I've always been non-existing and existing at all times, all measured, all scale. But determines me of what I want to put myself into. But if not existing, there's nothing existing around. Which means there's no mind, no brain, no heart, no body, no soul at all. Now that is the mind of empty space. All right, very powerful stuff, guys. The more you go into the mind, the more you collaborate everything that you see in perception, perceiving, location, settings, and the mind sets it up already in track core extended location to its system. The body starts recognizing line communication to telepathy, starts to understand how to use that line communication to telekinesis, knowing how to do that line communication to its 10, that puts all lines at its influence location system all through travel in location and manipulation. So there really is nothing for you to do. But the one thing you have to get out of is what you see, the body itself. You can't see the body anymore. You got to see it. All of it's at dimensional. So if you're looking in the mirror, this is you in settings. You're looking into reflections of you in the mirror. Okay, same angle, same point, same graph, same communication. You're looking at yourself in the mirror, right? But you're not a reflection. Your life is not a reflection. Okay? So how you see yourself in reflection, you understand how to keep yourself in codification setting. It keeps you in all levels of imagination that you are, that puts you all communications in balance, right? So that's the nothing. This is the interesting stuff. Check this out. Now, you think you're there. Check this out. This is you. That's not you. That's you. That's always been you. So you're always in the mirror. That's really you. This is not you. That's you. This is the space. Okay, this is you existing into non-existing. Non-existing, existing. Non-existence, all existing. Okay? Non-existing, non-existing, existing, existing. There's the balance. So when you're looking in the mirror, you're actually looking at yourself. That's you, non-existing, existing at the same time. That's where it gets very confusing, right? And the more you understand that, the more you see yourself in 3 settings. Okay, 2 mirrors into 1. You're seeing 2 versions of you, right? Now you're seeing 3 versions of you, vortexing. There's 3 versions. Now there's 4 versions. Now that's where it comes in time frame, main frame, track frame, correlations frame, and setting to travel. Okay? So you're seeing multiple levels of you in tractions now, but you're not seeing reflection. The actual reflection is you. That isn't you. That's the story. So the story is a carbon base. It's a reflection of a storyline base. It's a communication setting that offlines its communication over silicones, directing ground lines and highline communication setting. So all you're interpreting is seeing yourself in a dream. But when you see your mirror, that's you. That's what's crazy. Okay? That's the alteration, how you see yourself in the mirror. That's real you. That is the outer space. That's the inner space. That's the inner space, the outer space. So every time you see in the mirror, you're seeing yourself in the simulation, which is even more crazy. See, that's adaptation. We live inside everything. You live in a mirror, but you become the mirror, not a resolution of a mirror, not a reflection of a mirror. There's no reflection of anything if you're already in the simulation, but we're living inside of everything, and everything's living inside ourselves. We live inside the mind. The mind is the conception. Then we mutate, and then the body comes in. And how we speak, the body comes in, from existing to all levels and tractions. But if there's no any lines of all communication and you're just levels of empty space, everything around you is not existing at all until you bring it in frame through your thoughts, your actions, and your emotions. But that's what it is in set position, all right? This is you in the simulation. This is you in carbon base of your story. So you think that's you. No, you're looking you. You're looking at you. You're looking towards you. You're looking for yourself. Yourself is inside the self, which is inside of everything you see. So when you're seeing the reflections of your face in the TV, you're seeing yourself, looking at your story of yourself. More confusion. Booyah. You didn't know that, did you, team? Now you do. All right. So that's going to be a lot to talk about, too, on Q&A. So, sir, are you saying everything I see in reflection is me? Yep. That's you seeing in a simulation. So what you're seeing, and where you're seeing a reflection in the water, that water is you in the simulation looking at its carbon base, that it is a story, that it isn't the person that it's looking at. It's just looking at a story that isn't him or her. I'm trying to get you guys to understand these things, how you see in perspective. Mirror resolution, Mandela effects, butterfly effects. This whole time, you guys have been living inside the simulation. So when you're looking in a mirror, in set position, combing your hair, ladies, okay, you're inside, looking at the story that isn't you. This is the story. This is you in the simulation of the mirror itself. Now, once you come to acceptance, this energizes and transforms and mutates inside the mirror. You go inside the mirror, and now you expand in set position, non-existing and existing at the same time of travel. I don't think it gets any more powerful than that, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? So, welcome back to class. Whoa. So when you're seeing a spoon, right? Just a regular spoon. Okay? So you're here in that position, location, line settings, processing that position, location to its systems. You're holding that spoon, right? You're holding that spoon. Okay? You're holding that spoon, right? So you're seeing the reflection of the face inside the spoon. That's you in the simulation. That's you in copy paste. Isn't that crazy? So there is no spoon, but how you see a spoon in that position. Very confusing to your mind, lines, and conceptual setting. All this time, everything you've been looking at, you've been looking in the wrong direction. You've always been inside of everything you see. That's you in the simulation. That's the eyes. That's the windows. That's the soul. Are we awake now? All right, setting sequence lines of panel. Setting operation system. So once you direct that you always been inside of everything that you see in reflection or anything Mandela or anything in timeline or anything in twilight zone and that line communication setting or vertigo, you've always seen your face inside yourself. You've always been inside of everything that you see. This is you in the copy of the story frame that never was you. That's the confusion. Okay? It mind alterates your system of confusion settings. Your psychosis of where you are in attractions, living inside of everything. And that's what's going to happen. That's the mind. That's the interpretation. That's living in the mind itself of inception, people. Okay? Doesn't get any more powerful than that. Okay? And once you understand this, then you understand the body. Body's coming in. Now the actual spoon is this big in set position. And then you become the spoon itself. So it doesn't matter, there's no spoon. So if I'm doing this, right? What am I doing? Copy and paste myself, right? But is the spoon doing this way or is the spoon going that way? Because it has its own consciousness, its own awareness. So to recognize that in that position, you're not in a mirror. You're seeing yourself from outside projection of yourself that doesn't exist. So you're looking from inside of the story that isn't you. That's what's even more crazy. Now you understand how to identify yourself inside of everything? And that's what it is. That's mind interpretation itself to its inception, guys. And that's what's going to happen. Okay? So if you see a TV in position of face, that's you. So when you're watching TV, you're watching TV, you don't realize this is actually you inside the game, right? Which is really crazy in so many ways and forms. So you're watching TV, you're watching all frames of different TV, it doesn't matter. But you're seeing the face facade that's actually you all this time. So there is no reflection. There is no Mandela. There is no butterfly effect if you're inside the self, which is inside the mind. All levels of face recognition of time setting. Right? Now, once you identify this and this forms into this and goes inside the game. Now, you're in full figure of the game itself. Inside the game. Oh, yeah. You allow yourself to go inside of everything. So you no longer see anything in reflection. You no longer see the Mandela. You no longer see the butterfly. You no longer see the vertigo. You no longer see confusion. You see yourself inside yourself. Everything of thyself is inside the mind. Collaboration, a partnership, how you see things in perspective and perception. Okay? Very powerful stuff, guys. All right? How'd you like those apples? See you in 5.